All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome to the podcast. Today, I got my friend Joe with me. He's a comic artist. He's going to be talking a little bit about his personal projects and his experience working in the comic industry. You want to give us an introduction?
Sure, man. What's up, Wes? So yeah, my name is Joe Catapano. I am a comic artist that kind of, in one way or another, taught himself how to write, and I created a book called Star Circuit, which is it's an ongoing project, but it's a mini series. It's a cyberpunk book, and I'm really enjoying making it. I also have a YouTube channel that I usually post tutorials. I've written a lot of tutorials for howtodrawcomics.net. And then from there, I've been making my own, and my YouTube channel is doing pretty well. It's just Good Joe, like my name on the screen here, or you can look it up. I think Good Joe Art is the actual tag, but it's been fun, and yeah, that's for now. I'm doing comics and storyboards.
Yeah, man, I'm gonna share. I'm gonna share my screen here because I want to show people your comic.
Cool.
It's really cool, man. When I came across your comic, I was like, "Oh, this dude has put in some hours. You've put in some time, bro." Like
Thanks, man.
this star circuit um, is it's really cool, man. We'll go down to some of the art here. You have the preview on here, don't you?
Yeah,
The
the
art
this is the new website. So there's
preview
the
chat.
gallery. I have the preview. Yeah, you can go in the preview. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, what I really liked about your your concept is that it wasn't superhero. At least that's not my impression.
It's not at
Um,
all. Yeah.
yeah, which to me, like I feel like after this last onslaught of like Marvel movies and stuff like that, I think maybe the public is potentially getting burned out on the superhero thing. I don't know if you were calculating that in your decisions to make this or not. But I thought it was very refreshing that you have like it has that same kind of energy in your drawings of like uh, of something that could have kind of a superhero vibe to it, but
Yeah,
I
it's
guess you could say go ahead.
I was gonna say the like yeah, some of the art style, some of like the proportions of figures and things like that, kind of reminiscent of like, oh, this could have been like a whatever, like a futuristic Batman Beyond story or so. Who knows? Um, but yeah, it just is. It's just not. The funny thing is, I started out with a my first idea, first premise for the book was had a little bit of a superhero-y thing to it, where like the main
Mhm,
rider, the main racer, had like a special ability, but I moved away from that many times over. So um,
mhm.
in the beginning, like I said, I taught myself how to write with this book. So I spent a year and a half just like waking up at 4 in the morning before work and like just reading books and trying to write it, and then realizing what I wrote was not working, and then rewriting and rewriting until I got something I wanted to actually make.
So what was your process for learning how to write it? Like you would write out a scene and then would you try to illustrate it and then maybe show it to somebody and see if they understood what it is that was going on, or
Mm,
what was your process?
well, there's a little bit with comics. It's a little different because there's a combination of story and art. And I was training myself to be an artist for a long time, trying to do comics and just making samples. So I was very familiar with making comic book pages and storytelling that way, and like just trying to tell a clear story with just the art. So I had a little bit of a leg up, but what I didn't get is how to make a story that like was telling the thing you wanted to tell and at the same time be entertaining, and keep the reader reading and that sort of thing. So my process really came down to reading a couple books. That what really helped me was this one guy's a few books called his name's Brian McDonald, and he has a book called Invisible Ink. He's got another book called I think The Golden Theme, and he pretty much bases all his writing on theme, and that's what he pretty much like convinced me that was the way to go, and I've been writing that way ever since. So everything's based around the theme of whatever I'm trying to tell. And a lot of people say that's the moral of the story, or but it's really just the point of what you're trying to say in the story. Um,
Mhm.
I just recently listened to a Chuck Palahniuk interview. I don't know if you know who that is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so Chuck's,
Mhm.
for anybody who doesn't know, that's the writer of Fight Club and Joke. And either way, he had a bit of advice for writing, and he pretty much says that the what you want to do with writing is to tell the reader the same thing over and over, but in completely different ways. Like your job is to figure out as many ways as possible to tell the reader the exact same thing over and over. And
Mhm.
I would argue that thing you're trying to tell the reader is the theme. That would be the theme. And the theme is usually a sentence that is, to me, should be a debate. And the way Brian McDonald would describe it is a debate. So it's not just like, whatever, heaven is real. That's not, the debate
Mhm.
would be, is heaven real or is heaven fantasy? That would be the
Mhm.
theme. The theme is, and then throughout the story, you'd have characters going back and forth trying to figure out if that's like a real thing, and each character would pretty much be putting out points and arguments for and against it. And that's how most of what I look at in stories. Yeah, so that's kind of how I went about it.
That's yeah, that's an interesting way of putting it. That reminds me of I'm doing my own comics as well, and I'm reading through The Anatomy of Story by John Truby, who's like a
Ooh,
screenwriter, and he's done like he's like a screenwriting mentor, and he's like mentored like all the when Hollywood actually made good movies way back in the day, like
way back.
eons ago,
Yeah.
eons ago. So this guy was like he was the guy you took your screenplay to, so he could like touch it up and give you what it is that you needed. But anyway, he says that essentially what a story is it's a conflict between people's different perception of reality,
Hmm.
and that like you're like each character has their own worldview, and they're trying to figure out which one is the dominant one in this story. So the protagonist and the antagonist are really battling over like whose version of reality is the real version of reality.
I like
And
that.
so that what you just said reminded me of that.
Yeah, that the it's essentially that's the debate. Yeah, generally, and in a lot of ways, the antagonist and the protagonist are the same character with
Yeah.
the flip. They're the same. They're the same coin, but with different theologies, or not theologies, but like different philosophies of the same debate. And so one guy, they both were like abused as children, but one guy like was able to
Mhm.
use the pain and protect people because of it. And the other guy was like so hurt by it that he wants the whole world to be hurt like him. And their philosophies are going to come into play and battle each other out. It doesn't always have to be that way. I think before the stream we were talking about Narwhal, and he's kind of this creator that goes against the grain, and he creates stories more for the moment. It's almost like he likes things people like Tarantino, and
Mhm.
I mean I think a lot of people do, but what Tarantino in particular does is he focuses on pretty much like moments, like making sure the whole point to make a scene happen or make a story like into fruition is because you think these series of moments are special and relate to people. And it's not really about this global debate that I'm talking about,
Mhm.
and that's an argument to be had. Like maybe a story doesn't need to have this big overall overarching theme that has to make a point and has to like make sense. That makes it worthwhile for me as a creator, and I don't think that necessarily needs to be there for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when it comes down to like theme, like one of the other things he says in that book, The Anatomy of Story, is that he says that in relation to characters, that all the characters should basically be like reflections of one another. Like you said, like two characters go through the same childhood. One of them wants to make the world a better place. The other one wants to make the place a worse place, right? Like they want to take their pain out on other people. And then obviously, you can clearly see like maybe the protagonist. he has a good heart, but he doesn't know how to make the world a better place. And so he runs into a reflection character in the version of a mentor, somebody
Hmm.
who's already been through that journey, and they're basically the wise old sage that's going to give them the information it is that they need. I think that, like, when it comes to Tarantino, I think you could. I understand what you mean when it's like he's capturing a moment in time, and there's not necessarily this big overarching like theme that he's trying to communicate.
Hmm.
But I still think that you could make the argument that his stuff is still very thematic because um, it's. Here, I'm gonna cancel my screen sharing so we can chat. Um, so he he still has, it's still kind of like a war over whose version of reality is real, right? Because you have, like, in Hateful Eight, you basically have people trying to control this chaotic situation,
Hmm.
and trying to convince the other people of the way it is that they want the situation to go, right?
Right. So
So
survival
it,
kind of a thing. Yeah.
yeah, so it still fits. It's just, I guess he's not thinking about it on a global scale, right?
Yeah, and maybe I think this is when we bring up the whole creative writing course you take in college or something where you have that teacher that always is just like, what is it really about? Like what is it really underneath it all? And I think if you want to, you can find that meaning even in stories that weren't like didn't mean to have like some sort of moral or theme. And
Mhm.
so it gets a little janky, but in general, I do think Tarantino's work does have a little bit of that theme because, um, like, if it, my point is like if you're making a good story that feels cohesive and feels like it's got the punch and feels like it's relating to you really closely, it means that it does have a theme. Like, I don't think you can have both and not have some because um, even the movies that or stories that are like jumping around and like make you feel
Mhm.
uneasy, maybe the theme is you need to let go and of like what's comfortable. That would be the theme. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
there's a reason why that feels so, like Requiem for a Dream or something that makes you feel
Yeah.
so weird. Uh, you know, a movie like that will the themes might just be something that are more disturbing than what you want to analyze. Uh, but yeah, comics have such an. You brought up that I didn't go superhero. I think me and Pete Sametti talked about it last week on my channel, but there's so many different genres out there, especially in indie comics, and I think that's the what's going to be coming back because the mainstream has been sucking for so long. Now it's almost undeniable, and so that's why I think a lot of people call it the Iron Age coming back, and this Iron Age is going to be awesome. I think we're going to have we're going to see a ton of like small superstar IPs like come up and just like amaze people.
Yeah, yeah, the mainstream has just completely dropped the ball. Like, they just don't have the pulse on the culture, and I mean, in all honesty, they're probably so, they're so monolithic that they don't really have the ability to change the way that culture changes now, because culture changes, like, really on a moment to moment basis based on, like, kind of what's trending on Twitter or what's trending on YouTube to some extent, right? I mean,
Yeah,
like, you can't expect them to be able to, like, always be relevant with the size of the budget it is that they have, and their real need in order to actually recuperate that budget. There, that is
right.
one element.
It's weird because this happens to a lot of people, but I don't see how you can create something with the knowledge that you're going to try to create this universe like afterward. Like the whole
Yeah.
idea of having a slate of movies is the craziest thing I've ever heard. Like you're telling me before you make the thing, you're going to be like, there's going to be a super dude 15 and it's going to be because this and this happens and we're planning on it in 20 years. Like who does that? Like just make number one and make it like the best thing ever. You know what I mean? Like and go from there. It's my only gripe against. Have you seen the indie creator Eric July who put out the Ripaverse and he's got this one
Okay.
superhero? You've seen him?
Okay.
And
Mhm.
that's my one gripe with him is like he started out with he's got the resources at least, but like why go at it in such a universe type of way? Like why just
Mhm.
make one series really good first and then go from there. It just doesn't seem like an organic way to make something if you try to go about this in like the universe way.
Yeah, I'm not completely familiar with his comics. I am familiar with his YouTube stuff. I used to listen to him for quite a while. I've been
Yeah,
kind
he's a
of at
good
a
speaker.
yeah, for sure. He's a cool dude. Um, yeah, I used to live in Dallas, so I'm
Okay.
surprised I'm surprised I never ran into him.
Yeah.
But he but
Texas guy.
I think that that speaks actually to what we were talking about before is like I can kind of understand from his perspective because he's got the resources that like if he can put teams on different stories, like I wish I could kind of do that, you know, like I kind of want to I don't want to be in an art director role, but I feel like I have enough ideas and I feel like they're good enough that if I had the money, if I had the money and I could just be like, okay, I have this is my idea. I'm going to sketch it out for you. Could you just draw it and you take care of that? And I'm going to work on this project because you know, like we were saying before, there's so many like when you start doing this creative thing, there's so many ideas that come to your mind, and it can get so confusing because you're like, I don't know which one it is that I should jump on first. I don't,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? Like, do you deal with that? Because you say you've got like a lot of projects on your plate.
I do, but I don't. I because I'm working on projects that are other writers' babies.
Hmm.
So yeah, I'm doing my book, and then I'm doing other books that are written by other people, which
Okay.
it's still cool because I'm like a co-creator in a way because that's how comics work. But in another way, it's not really the same. And
Yeah.
but I do have other ideas, and I put them in my back pocket. I've got a in my bookshelf. I've got a folder of all the ideas. Some of them are just like, what if I ever got to draw whatever established character? This is what I would want to tell. I'm like one of those creators
Mhm.
that like I would actually do like a whatever my run on Batman, but it would have to be this one particular story, this one type of
Mhm.
what because I don't really care about doing it any other way. Um, but for the most part, I have general ideas. You and me share this sci-fi thing, so like a lot of my in retrospect, like most of my stories are um, just like oriented around science fiction, but always have this tinge of like a groundedness to it, and so that's why it feels more cyberpunk. But
Mhm.
yeah, I have a lot of stories in mind um, that are in this folder. So you have a bunch of ideas. How many have you like maybe concepted out? Do you have any that like are in another phase past writing?
Yes. So I have one idea, which is called it's called Suicide, and it's basically about like the society of rats. And I'm doing some concepting stuff for that, just to um, honestly build out a portfolio for like concept art stuff.
You said
Yeah.
suicide.
Suicide, yeah.
That's an awesome title.
It was actually a guy came to me and he had this story written of like this it was called Suicide, and he had this story written out, and then he just ditched it. And I asked him, I was like, well, can I do something with this because you don't want to do it anymore. Like I designed some characters for him and we were about to start on the book. And then I basically told him the price and he was like, no, I don't want to do it. And then
Hmm.
he was like, I'm going to move on to some other idea. And I just kept drawing on the idea. I just thought like, oh, that would be just so cool. Like I can kind of do like this odd world kind of thing with these different like kind of rats and like what can I do with that? So I got this idea of like, what if I could take this and turn this into like kind of like an animal farm kind of story? So
Yeah.
I have that, and I've been sketching on that, and then I have the Philip K. Dick files, which is just taking Philip K. Dick short stories and turning them into comics. Some of his public domain stuff and turning them into comics,
Hmm.
just to learn how to put books together, serve a community, build an audience. You know, because I'm like I was telling you before, like I'm a huge fan of sci-fi, but to me, science fiction is like, I like the weird stuff. I like the weird 1970s, like strange science fiction book it is that you find that has like some weird psychedelic cover with like a, like the pyramid with the eye on it or something like that.
Yeah.
Like the trippy stuff, the like the Pink Floyd trippy kind of stuff that I grew up with.
Awesome.
And Philip K. Dick, he fits in with that because his stuff, like I said, his characters are like, they're like these characters that are stuck in some sort of a mental breakdown, or they're having some sort of spiritual revelation, and so much of his stuff has inspired um, so much of pop culture. You think like Black Mirror, that's
Hmm.
100% Philip K. Dick. The
Yeah.
Matrix, that's basically a Philip K. Dick story. um, Truman Show, and then all of the adaptations of his movies, like Minority Report, Total Recall, Blade Runner, um, Scanner
Yeah.
Darkly.
Scanner Darkly. Yeah.
Yeah,
The
Scanner Darkly.
I was going to say
Yeah,
they also. I think Amazon made a bunch of Black Mirror e type episodes. Have you seen those? They're like
yeah,
literally.
Electric Dreams.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Electric Dreams. Yeah. I think
that's
I've
that.
watched one. Yeah.
Yeah, those are actually straight adaptations of some of his short stories.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yeah, yeah. So I think I've only seen like one or two of those, but yeah, I mean, like he has so many interesting ideas, and I feel like so much of the science fiction stuff has trended towards like the Star Wars and whatnot. But
Hmm.
if you look at like him, or you look at like Robert Anton Wilson, that's
Hmm.
another guy that's worth checking out.
We'll write it
uh,
down.
yeah, he's kind of like a psychedelic. Let me make sure I've got that name right.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he's a really interesting author. Like he wrote the Illuminatus trilogy,
Okay.
so you can already get a hint at like where he's coming from. He merges like American history with like conspiracy theories and like psychedelics and just a bunch of weird stuff. It's really cool, really creative.
Nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was recently watching a YouTuber's like top 10 sci-fi book list, and I read a few of that what he mentioned, but most of them I did not read, and so I've got a bunch of books that I wanted to dive into. He brought up a few that are really really good. Um, what's the biggest one? I think his number one is Blindside, and
blind faith.
yeah, I forget who wrote that. That's a really famous one. I think another one's Disembodied, maybe. Let me think. But I think one of them is kind of like this tale of two worlds, and it's an interesting take on pretty much each world is. So it gets a little political because each world has its own like views, and but the K Dick kind of feel is there because like each world is completely different, like how it works, how it like it opens your mind, and I think that's the big thing that K Dick does is like you it opens your mind to like this actually being a possibility and it actually working. It's almost like it's such an out there idea, but the way he presents it like is grounded enough where you're like, oh, this could work, you know. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Fleshes it out enough. Um, yeah, big fan of Phil K. Dick though, definitely. Um, I mean,
Are
I'm a
you
big
are you
fan of.
big?
I think Blade Runner might be my favorite movie.
Yeah. Hmm.
It's definitely
Yeah, I
good.
did a I did a video analysis series on Blade Runner on my YouTube channel that people can check out.
Cool.
I did it partly as like a way to learn storytelling and learn story structure and whatnot. And there's so many interesting things about that. Like if you talk about story structure itself, right? Like
Mm.
what is Deckard doing whenever the film opens? The first thing it is that he's doing is basically setting up what the character is desiring, what the character is needing right away,
Mm.
right? Like that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
Well, what Deckard is doing is he's flipping through a newspaper looking for a job, and how fitting is that for this like cyberpunk setting and for like the time it is that we're living in now. Like he's living in this place where it's like overcrowded, everything has been taken over by like this kind of like capitalism that just it's just like a city sprawl that doesn't end. The
Yeah.
only religious symbols are like the corporate symbols of the Tyrell Corporation, which is like a pyramid,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
And
that and
he's
also like what the Atari, you get all the corporations on the holograms and stuff.
yeah, yeah, totally. Like it's kind of like the beginning of a product placement, but in a I guess in an ironic way, right?
Yeah,
But he's
absolutely.
he's he's flipping through that paper, and like one of the things I thought was interesting from a story structure perspective is that like what I've heard is that you want to make the character make a decision. That's how it is that we empathize with the character, is that they make a decision.
Hmm.
There has to be some sort of a choice it is that they make, right? So he gets taken to Bryant's office, and in Bryant's office, Bryant is basically like, "Hey, I need you to hunt some replicants for me." And he's resisting. Deckard is basically resisting him and saying no. But there's a subtle way that he says yes, which is that Bryant pours 2 shots of liquor and puts it in front of him, and he
Hmm.
takes one of the shots of liquor.
Yeah.
And that to me is like him subtly saying yes, even though he's outwardly saying no. He's
Right.
like he's stepping back into this world, because by the end of it, by the time he kills the replicant in the mall,
Hmm.
like he immediately turns around and goes and buys like a pitcher of liquor.
Yeah.
Like that's how it escalated.
Yeah. It's cool because I think the last thing that convinced him. I mean, depending on which cut you're watching, but I think it's like once he learns that um, the other guy dies, the guy that was actually trying to track the first replicant, he gets killed, and I think that's what he tells him. I think that's what Brian tells him, that this guy died, and I think that's one of the reasons why it helped him decide.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm remembering that wrong. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but also, I've watched every cut, and each cut is a little bit different, especially the theatrical cut. Um,
Yeah.
Um, and but yeah, it's very. I think that's an interesting one to study story uh, structure. I feel like one of the books I read, I think Save the Cat is one of the best story structure books out there. It's
Mm-hmm.
one of those most practical, useful ones that helped me. Broke it down to like a finite thing, and then I could actually, you know, yeah, they broke it down to he breaks it down to like a really hard science, but from there you just take it or leave it, and then um, use the guides you want to guide that you want take whatever you want and let it guide you pretty much. But with Blade Runner, it's interesting because it's kind of like I feel like it's more it's not so hero's journey like, and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
movies these days are hero's journey, um,
Mm-hmm.
and Blade Runner is not so much a hero's journey. It's almost like it is a little bit, but it's almost like a hero's journey that in the end he finds out the heroic thing is not what he's doing. So
Mm-hmm.
um, interesting in that way. But there's many movies that do that. But anyway, the story structure thing, I really like looking into story structure that um, for me, like when you look at what makes things work, number one, it's characters. I think characters beyond anything else sell whatever you're talking about. Like when you
Yeah.
look back on the last thing you're like skeptical on, but then you're like, oh, I'm in. I decided I'm in on this story now. It's usually because one of the characters did it for you, and that's every time I think about it, that's what it is. It's something where there was a situation where a character got to shine in a way that you didn't think was going to go down. I like when um, well, the main character has to be a protagonist that is, like you said, proactive, making choices, but also like human on our level as far as making mistakes and like being relatable. Um, there's a guy called, actually I forget his name now. He's got a book called Story Solution, and he breaks down, I think, eight things the hero should have, and most of them are like just good rules of thumb to get the audience on your side. One of them being like the hero needing to, like, they can be kind of, they can do something crappy, but it has to be because of like someone else's manipulation. Like almost like you can get fired from whatever job he's at, but the firing has to be partly someone else's doing. You know what I mean? Someone else had it out for him. So it's like an injustice, like an injustice of what's happening to that character. That's just one of them, but there's plenty others. Just like you said, uh, the proactiveness, courageousness, and then one of the biggest ones is like humor. You'd be surprised at how much humor can sell an audience.
Totally. Yeah. And what's interesting about those things, we were talking about genuineness and in storytelling and in art before we started the podcast. What's interesting about that is like you can even regardless of how your story is structured, you can smell the genuineness on something from a mile away. Like, you can, like with some of Philip K. Dick's stuff, like the plot structure just really isn't there, and you read it and you're just like, what, well, like how many drugs were you on when you rewrote this? Were you
Yeah,
on all of them? But the ideas are there, and so it connects with you in some way. Um,
yeah,
but then you go and you see like the crap it is that we see in the theaters today, and it leaves like so much to be desired because you start to see why people. I've noticed this, that more and more people treat storytelling as like real. They storytelling as like you're just wasting your time watching a movie. You're just wasting your time reading a book or something like that. And I think that a lot of it's because of how the mainstream media or the mainstream film industry has trivialized storytelling into like these like very cookie cutter little rides, little theme park rides it is that you do, and that don't really connect with your human experience. All the steps are there, but the soul isn't there. Like it might as well be AI generated.
yeah. I like how you describe it as a theme park ride because I think that's the difference
Yeah.
between if you think about like you going and exploring your whatever your the forest behind your house, and then you going on a theme park ride of like going on a forest adventure. It's the difference is like you're talking about the spirit, the danger, the real emotions that happen in the adventure rather than this plastic coated, guardrailed type of experience that you just get the sense of in Hollywood these days. It just doesn't have that dark um, it doesn't have that feel. I saw a meme today of because I know they're remaking Willy Wonka, and I saw the meme saying that the reason why the Gene Wilder experience is the best one, and the one that tops them all, is because you always had in the back of your mind that he looks like a kind of guy that he would actually let one of these kids die if no one else was around or something. You know what I mean? Like all the new remakes, like I don't have that feeling of like this like that's the whole thing. Like he's a nice, bubbly, crazy guy, but at the same time he's got this weirdness to him, this darkness that you don't know if he's gonna like let somebody like just perish in his factory. Um, it's funny that's what I thought of, but yeah.
Yeah, he's like the Willy Wonka is like the proto artist in a way. Like he's kind of a portrait of an artist. Like he's got this whole thing that he puts on, but then when you get to the film, he's by himself behind closed doors working on the next thing, and he's kind of annoyed that this kid keeps bothering him. Like, no, you didn't. I can't remember how does it end. Like he was supposed to do something and he doesn't do it, and Willy Wonka's basically like f off, something like that, right?
Yeah, he screwed. Yeah, he didn't. He remember the grandpa and the kid took the candy and they floated in the fan machine and almost died.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and so yeah, they also he pretty much he didn't pass the test uh, as well as
yeah.
all the other kids, and and Willy Wonka was upset about that.
Yeah. That's a perfect example of kind of betraying the audience's expectation.
Yeah.
Like that was something it is that films used to do. Like you,
Hmm.
you expect it to go through this series of events, and then Charlie wins at the end or whatever. And
Yeah.
then, like you said, like I was saying, you whenever that happens, and then you see behind closed doors, and you get an insight to like this is really Willy Wonka. Willy Wonka's like he's doing his thing. He's behind closed doors. He's a very private person, and you can tell that he's kind of a curmudgeon a little bit. Like a little bit of
Yeah.
that's coming into his personality, you know. And like to me, that like it just seems like the he's playing the role of the artist, or he's playing the archetype of an artist.
Yeah. That actually it lines up with my life at least.
Yeah.
um,
Right.
yeah, I feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's something weird, dude. The feeling I was thinking about it, I was like, oh, do the is it because the movies today are not dark enough? And I'm like, it's not really the case. It's like because we're also missing movies and stories that are have this genuine moral like concreteness. Because I think those are
Yeah.
movies that I really like as well. But today's
Mhm.
movies don't even do that well. Like they're they make movies that are like look polished and look like they're I don't know like CG'd to hell, but also don't have this kind of code of like this moral theme that they're trying to throw at you and try to convince you of. They don't even have that. It's usually just like this in general feeling of empowerment or something, or
Mhm.
generally some sort of minority or some sort of
Mhm.
identity politics within it.
Mhm.
And I don't know. I just thought of it. I was like the old movies also had morally grounded movies that were good, and so you don't necessarily need like a dark and twisted movie. What you need is something. You need somebody with a vision, and you don't need producers there to like stop your funding if you go with your vision. That's the problem. Like that's the problem with like what happened to Kevin Smith. Kevin Smith and like Clerks and Clerks Two even and you know Dogma. Like those are like those are the passion movies that he made. And you're like, man, this is like a movie. This is something that's awesome.
Yeah.
And the stuff he made later, as he like slowly I guess hung with the wrong people or something. He slowly got less and less
Mhm.
that person.
Yeah, yeah, you can have that authorship, and then you can end up losing your way because you get around people that are maybe too many yes men around you, maybe too many people that have money, and you get caught up in that world. Totally, like, and that's one of those that I love about. That's what I loved about your book. I felt like there was some genuine authorship coming through the your comic,
Thanks.
um, and it felt fresh. It felt unique. Felt like it was really from the heart, you know.
Yeah, I
And
I aimed for I well not I nobody aims for authenticity. You either have or you don't. But
mhm,
you know it's another thing though. Like you have to do you do have to say no to things, and a lot of those things are like, do I make it a little bit more appealing here, or you know, do I do the thing that won't be as sellable, even though it's what I want to
yeah,
do, you know?
yeah, yeah, and I guess that goes with like with a lot of the stories it is that you see in the mainstream. I think we were talking about the moral side of things. I think it's like the more ambiguity of a lot of older films.
Hmm.
They weren't trying to like put this agenda on you because that's typically what it comes down to now. It's like it's either some sort of an agenda, or it's just something that's like very heavy-handed. But like my favorite films and the films that stick with you, I think any piece of art that really sticks with you. Like I'm actually writing. I don't know if it's going to end up being a book, just a series of blog entries, but like I kind of found this. consistent thread through all art, which I thought was really interesting, which is just really what you're trying to do is you're trying to get somebody to empathize,
Mm.
right? And there's different mechanics that you use in order to do that in different media. Okay, so like take for example an individual image, like a painting. We
Mm.
look at Frazetta painting. Frazetta's paintings, they're not just technically good. He's telling a story with the image. And what's interesting about the way that he's doing that is that he's pulling you into the like when we think empathy, we think compassion, but that's not really empathy. Empathy is me putting myself in your point of view, right? And it's me projecting myself into what I'm looking at, right? So when you look at a Rosetta painting, like I'm going to do an analysis video on one in particular,
Mm.
where like he'll have like there's one where there's a guy and he's got his knife out and he's waiting for this guy who's about to run up on him, and there's another guy behind him that's about to grab his hair and is about to stab him in the chest. And Frazetta paints the picture right as this guy's reaching for this guy's hair and he's pulling his knife back. And then you're seeing the reaction of the girl that's seeing this. But the guy that's squaring off with the other guy, he doesn't see that this guy's behind him that's about to stab him. So that pulls you into the piece because the viewer is getting more information than the character in the illustration is,
Right.
right? So just by the nature of pulling into it, so it's allowing you to insert yourself into it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you look at a story, like why is it so important that a character makes a decision? Well, it's because you're it's invoking that same thing, right? Like you you from the viewer's perspective, you're able to put yourself more into that person's shoes because they're making a decision between two different things. And so
Mm-hmm.
you in your mind are weighing the consequences of that choice, right?
Yes.
It's involving you in that process.
Oh man,
And
you're.
especially, go ahead.
I was going to say you're going because I mentioned Narwhal before
Yeah.
in his books, but you're going down his path. He actually wrote a whole PDF on what you're talking about right now. He calls it
Okay.
interactivity. Um,
Interactivity.
Freaking yeah, and other people call it different things. I think I have the book too. Hitchcock called it pure cinema. It's pretty much this
Okay.
moment where the context, the subtext, and then the actual text, the scene informs the audience in a way where you know more than just what's being shown on screen. Like you see,
Hmm.
like you said, you're seeing the guy and you're seeing the other guy, and he's getting ambushed, and you see the girl, and so like you know more than all the characters in the scene. So you get to have this interplay, and you have to you're making these logical two
Hmm.
plus two. How does he get out of this? Type of
Yeah.
situation in your brain. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, totally. I took a course with on a. Do you know what Project City is?
Um, no, no. Say I may know it, but it's just not ringing a bell right now.
Oh, dude, you got to check it out. Project City is it's like a collection of animators that have they do their own like mentorships and tutorials and that sort of thing, and like
Oh yeah, it's like a
uh,
hub for tutorials and stuff, right?
yeah.
Cool,
So
cool.
Peter Chung did Aeon Flux, right? Peter Chung.
Yeah.
Okay, so he did a director's mentorship, and so I took that, and that was basically like it was like 6 weeks or whatever of like us doing like little storyboards, and then him basically shitting on it. But he's breaking down different techniques, and
Hmm.
that's the way it is that he explained it was is that what you're doing with the story is that you're trying to put a question in somebody's mind, and then you're allowing the viewer to come up with their own hunch of how this is going to play out, and they're sticking around to figure out how that hunch is played out. I mean,
Yeah.
like even the YouTuber space has figured that out, right? Like
Hmm.
if you watch somebody who has good retention rate throughout a video, it's
Yeah.
basically somebody who's like gives you a hint of something that makes you want to stick around to the end of the video,
We were,
right?
dude. Me and my fiance were just talking to this over dinner. Because
Yeah.
another guy, I was in an interview with another guy. He's actually a young guy too, and he figured this out. He calls it, I think manga artists call it opening loops, opening and closing loops, essentially. So, and that's what
Yeah.
you're talking about.
Yep.
It's just like how many, even if you open a loop, you pretty much always want one loop open. And
Mhm.
I noticed it with like gaming streamers. Like if you want to be a good gaming streamer, if you want to play games for people on stream, the best thing you can do is don't play the game so straightforward. Like you, let's just say you head toward whatever you want to go fight this guy, and look like you're going to be going to fight him, but you make a left turn, go check your inventory, go figure out your stuff, and everybody's hanging on the edge. Like, when is he going to fight this guy? You know,
Yeah.
and it's a good way to keep, like you said, it's the good way to keep people watching. It's also a good way to keep people reading your book. Like you're wanting to know how are they going to get out of this? Like, you know, she knows, but he doesn't know, but they know. You know, like, and you're trying to figure out how is it all going to play out.
Totally. Yeah. And that's the thing with like that's the thing with these mainstream films, and I guess you could say some mainstream books or whatever. You get the sense that it's not genuine because it's not because partly it doesn't have the confidence to leave those loops open. It doesn't have the confidence like when you look at like No Country for Old Men, the
Yeah,
loop is like completely open at
all the
the end of
time.
it.
Yeah,
You're like your imagination just goes wild with how it is that this is going to play out from here on out. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
And like that seems to be the confidence of like a really good story.
Yeah, I kind
Whereas
of like that in
these,
Sicario. I didn't think I was going to like that movie, but Sicario turned out to be one of those type of.
what did
Um,
you think about the? Did you feel like the second? Was there a third one?
I didn't watch the second or third. I just saw that because it's Denis Villeneuve, right?
Yeah.
And he did Dune and he did Prisoners and he did other movies that I really liked, but I never got to see Sicario. And yeah, it didn't disappoint. There was like it opened and kept so many open loops. You
Mhm.
were just like hanging on, like I like. There's a part in the movie where they go through like what's the main dangerous city in Mexico? Anyway, they're driving through this crazy dangerous city, and you literally feel like you're the girl, you know, going for this ride along. It's nuts.
Mhm.
It feels like you're gonna die at any moment.
Yeah, totally, totally. Yeah. Well, the reason why I mentioned the sequel, or I don't know if there was two sequels or
I think there
I
is
can't
too. Yeah.
remember. So, I mean, they completely, I don't know if it's the same writers or the same directors, but
Mm-hmm.
like that kind of open loop sense that you got from Sicario, like I would put Sicario the vibe with No Country for Old Men, the way it is that it feels to me. It feels like they're kind of almost in the same universe, which
Yeah.
Sicario takes place in like, I think it takes place in El Paso, Texas,
Yeah.
right? Or it takes place somewhere around there. And
It's
then,
around there. Yeah. It's like the border. Yeah.
yeah, and I think No Country for Old Men takes place around there
Oh
too.
yeah, around the border too. That's weird. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So So yeah, I mean, like they both have that same sort of vibe, but then in the sequel, I think in the second sequel or the third sequel, they basically churn that really good actor, is it Benicio del Toro,
Yeah.
right? They
I think
basically
so.
turn him into like a superhero.
Yeah.
They turn him into like a hitman superhero. So it's like they completely go in a different direction with it. I wasn't happy with the
I
sequel.
had a feeling by the poster for that one. And you could just tell, like okay, he just literally became whatever Ryan Gosling in whatever other movie.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah,
He just became Bourne, Jason Bourne or
yeah,
something, and
Jason
like
Bourne, whatever. Yeah, straight up.
yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I don't know. I bring up Ryan Gosling, and I just the only thing that comes up in my brain is Between the Pines. I don't know if you've seen that one.
Which one?
Between the
Between
Pines,
the
I think.
Pines. No, I
No,
haven't seen it. I have
yeah,
not seen it.
it's like this weird multi-generational story. It's one of those like movies that span um, the same like characters and families of characters through the generations, if you
Mhm.
will. It's just crazy. It's one of the another one where you're like it's got a lot of open loops and danger and
Hmm.
you're left guessing a lot of the time. But yeah, people
100%.
don't. I think that's what's missing with film is exactly this, and I think you naturally kind of get more of this with comics because with a book you can't. You have to fill in the gaps yourself. Like it's
Yeah.
not a movie. The So with comic books, you literally have to fill in the gaps. Your brain automatically does that. So it just happens a little bit more naturally, where your brain gets in that mode of like, doing a lot of the work for you, or
Mhm.
for the book, for the IP.
Totally. Yeah, you got to fill in the gaps between things. So how did you? So you've been doing comics for how long? Like,
Man, I my story is that I started kind of started I pretty much tried to start drawing my first comic in 2011. Um, and it didn't really go anywhere. I wasn't a great artist. I was teaching myself how to draw at the same time. And then by 2016, I was good enough. Um, and that's after I took many jobs and graphic design and all this other stuff. Um, and I was still having bad experiences. In like 2015, I got hired for a couple jobs, and like, uh, this as an artist, like you'll be good at certain things but not really good at other things, and sometimes it happens to anybody. If you hire somebody to draw a specific thing, you assume maybe you can draw other things too, but that's not necessarily the case. And some of that happened to me, where like
Mhm.
I was just wasn't great with portraits just yet, and I lost jobs because of it. But anyway, through that time, around 2016 was when I first got the idea for Star Circuit. um, and back then it was simply, and this is kind of way more novel than it is today because it's 6 years, 7 years ago. Back then, thinking about AI and how
Mhm.
and this theme of like becoming obsolete, and there's not like, now it's almost like, oh yeah, yeah, dude, everybody's doing this thing.
Yeah.
um, but back then it was just a few of the fringe people were like talking about it all the time, and a lot of podcasts were talking about it. um, but yeah, that's kind of how for me, I started drawing my own book then. But the reason why I went that route is because I was doing samples and giving them to famous artists and whatnot at conventions, and getting advice and critiques. And at some point, they stopped telling me you suck, and they were like saying, "Oh, you're pretty good. I think you're actually probably better than what I was when I got my job." And when I didn't get a job and I kept hearing that, I was like, okay, I don't know how the universe works, but generally, generally, like if things line up the way they should, I should maybe get a job eventually. But I decided to do the thing that most people um, started to advise me in, which is do your own book, and that's why I went that route. I was like, I'm tired of drawing other people's characters and turning them in to people that think they're good enough, and then editors think that I'm not good. You know what I mean? Like, I was tired of
Yeah.
that kind of cycle of drawing someone else's stuff and then getting rejected. It's almost like you make somebody a sandwich, and then they're like, "Cool, thanks for the sandwich," and then they just throw it out. Um, yeah, that's how it feels.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Um,
Totally.
and doing that over and over, year after year, for a few years, can do give you a little bit of that feeling. And then yeah, that's why you start your own book, and I think you're on the right track too. Like, especially with the novels. I'm going to do a video about this, but I'm stealing it from you know who Feng Zhu is?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
The concept artist, right? If you go watch of his old streams, he would always talk about this all the time, which is novels are like it's like the visual library. It's like the golden goose for concept artists and
Oh.
artists in general. So if you think about it, novels have all these great keywords, the best descriptions in the world, the best plot lines, and they're just there for you to take and steal from. You just don't go there necessarily. And I think I'm going to make a video where I take a couple books and try to draw from them, because they're just really fun to do. If you've ever tried, I mean, obviously you're doing that with Phil Quay Dick, um,
Yeah.
but they're just fun to do. There's this I'm reading this series called The First Law, I think, and the first book is called The Blade Itself. Um,
Okay.
but anyway, I think I'm going to do it with that book, with like um,
Do
draw some of
you?
the characters from that.
You said it's called the first law.
The trilogy is called, I think, The First Law, but the first book, if you look up The Blade itself,
The Blade
you'll
itself.
find, yeah, The Blade itself. It's by Joe Abercrombie. I think he's a British guy.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, he's written a bunch of other books, but this trilogy, I'm just about finished with it. And at first I didn't think it was worth anything, but the character, like, it's one of those things where the structure's not great. I think the structure
Hmm.
could be better, but the characters are so damn good that
Hmm.
it doesn't matter. Like, it
Mm.
doesn't matter like what he does. Like, the characters are so good and so dynamic that it almost doesn't matter that there's an end goal or like they have motivations. They're just that well written.
That's cool. Yeah, I see he's got some comic book type art on here. I could totally see you like you could pitch something to him if you did a little bit of a comic of his
Yeah, I
stuff.
think I think he's had like a few issue series try to do it before, and so
Mhm.
that's why it kind of stopped me from doing it. But I definitely want to design some characters around. There's one guy in particular in his book, which is he's pretty much a war hero that got tortured for years and now is a
Mhm.
cripple. Every step he takes, every move he makes is a world of pain, and now he
Mm.
works for like an inquisition, like torturing other people. Um, and
Gosh.
so he's kind of got like a kind heart in the midst of it, and so every scene that he's in, you're kind of like rooting for him to have a change of heart at every second of his life. But you
Mhm.
can't blame him. It's almost like you can't blame him for hurting other people because, like, if you were tortured endlessly for 3 years, um,
Yeah.
I don't you can't imagine a person coming out of that, kind of thing.
Yeah. Totally. Do
Yeah.
you have the time to physically read or do you listen to the audiobooks?
I do both depending on what book it is. Some books, especially nonfiction, I like to have. This book, I got hooked on audio wise. Like, the books themselves are really thick and big and hefty, and they usually weigh a ton and they're hard to bring around. But I got hooked on it because this audio, the voice actor for this book series, I think is the best one I've ever heard ever.
Okay.
Like, by far better than like the full cast Lord of the Rings audiobooks. I think this
Okay.
guy, because it's only just him, and he does a better job at doing a full cast than anybody. He literally does a full cast with just him. He's like
That's
a
cool.
one man army. Dude, if you listen to it tonight, you'll be like up all night trying to listen to it. That's how good he is. I don't want to. Oh,
And
you're in the morning. You'll be up all day listening. Yeah. Anyway,
yeah,
that's my
that's
that's my goal with one of the videos, is to try to pretty much show the process to somebody. I want to show, like, take the first page, dissect the paragraph, and then as a visual artist, take what you can, but don't try to read into it exactly. Like, be
Mhm.
inspired by the feeling that the paragraph told you, and go from there.
Yeah, that was my vibe with the Philip K. Dick short stories. Like the first one I did was The Hanging Stranger. Because I read this story like a long time ago and I was like, fuck, this would be like a great Junji Ito comic. And I found somebody else had done it online and I came across it on itch.io and I bought it and I looked at it and I was like, it was very cartoonish. It was interesting because you see like everybody has their own interpretation of it.
Hmm.
So I'm not bad mouthing anybody's work, but it was very cartoonish and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like it made me. It's one of those things where you realize your own vision, and you didn't even realize that you had a vision with it.
Yeah, yeah.
Because in my mind, I saw it as like a Twilight Zone episode. I saw it as like this is a Twilight Zone episode, and I think Electric Dreams actually turned it into one of their episodes. I
Okay.
never watched, it. But yeah, I mean, it's about this guy who's on his way to work and he's about to turn on the intersection and he looks over to the side and he sees a dead body hanging in the town square from a lamp post and everybody's just walking past it like it's not there and
Mm.
he's like what the fuck is that and he pulls over and he walks up to it and he's like oh my god it's a dead body and then he's yelling at people like there's a fucking dead body do you not see it why are you not stopping and everybody's looking at him like what is your problem what is the issue like
Mm.
what are you freaking out about and then the cops try to like arrest him and then he's like trying to get away from the cops And like I said, like you can't tell, like, is this guy having like a psychological breakdown or like
Right.
what is going on?
Or is he living on another plane or whatever?
Yeah, like is he living on their plane of existence? And so that was really cool. And so I did that one, and that was the first one I did, and that was like trying to figure out how to do a comic, and that was like 50 pages. I put it for free. People can download it in the
Oh
description
yeah.
for free. Yeah. And then
Cool.
right now I'm adapting. It's a multi-issue thing, but it's called The Golden Man. That's the next one that I'm adapting right now, and that's basically like, I mean, dude, it's so I have the first issue done on the Golden Man,
Mhm.
which is also available for people to download for free.
Wow.
Um, and that
Where do
one's
you
like
have it
20.
on your website?
Yeah, it's on my website. It's on my Gumroad as well. I'll link
Okay.
it and I'll link you to it. Um, but yeah, like he, so it's his the Golden Man is basically his X-Men story before X-Men was around.
Right.
Like it's it definitely inspired X-Men, but it's not it's not at all X-Men. Like it's tripped out, it's weird,
Mm.
and you know, it's about like a nuclear fallout and people getting these abilities after a nuclear fallout.
It's pretty twisted. Yeah.
And but I mean, it's Philip K. Dick's interpretation of that.
Hmm.
And so I'm finishing up the next book on that, so that'll be cool to get that done and get that out there.
Sweet.
I think the third book I'm going to charge for it. I'm not sure if I'm going to do like some sort of Kickstarter or what. Have you've done a Kickstarter for your book, or you just put
I've
it
done an
together?
Indiegogo, yeah, on Star Circuit, yeah.
How did that go?
It went really well. It really depends on your friends and or if you have a YouTube channel that's big. If you got a bit, pretty much if you have outreach, it'll go well for you. If you don't, it will go okay for you at best. It's really just how many eyes can you get on it. So um, having like having people and connections to like go on their show and talk about it. So the bigger the show you get to go talk about it, the better numbers you'll do. I did 20K, but I only did that much because of, like I said, I was able to get on some shows that had big numbers.
Did did you do it for like a was the campaign long? Because I know Indiegogo you can do it for like an entire year. Did
Yeah,
you?
I did it longer than 60 days, but I hit 20K at 60.
Okay.
Or no, I
So it
hit
was great.
no, that was right. I hit like 15 at 60, and then another if with maybe another 4 months I hit 20K.
Okay.
So it was like a total of like 5 months it was up.
Okay. Yeah. I guess whenever I finish this book, I'm going to finish it probably this next week. I'll send it to you, and you can tell me your opinion if you think it's kickstart worthy. Because my
Yeah,
thing is like the third book is basically like the middle step between the beginning and the conclusion, right?
right.
And so if I kickstart something, I kind of feel like it might need to be either the complete story,
Hmm.
because I don't want somebody to just get a piece of the story whenever they've gotten the first part on my Gumroad, and then now they're getting a little piece of something for something that they paid, and then they would have to do it again for the conclusion. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, so I'm trying to figure out like how it is that I'm going to do that. Maybe I'll send it to you, and you can tell me your thoughts on it when I
Yeah,
get it done.
absolutely. Yeah, I'll trade you, man. I'll send you
Yeah,
mine. Yeah.
that's cool.
Um,
That's cool.
yeah, there's a lot of things that can go. I actually have a crowdfunding kind of basics document that was kind
Okay.
of being circulated around by one of our friends, and I'll send that to you as well. That'll help you.
Okay. That's cool, man.
Yeah, it's a lot of just the normal stuff that you think of, but some of it that is just a little bit more specific. But it's the no brainers like, yep, you have to have, yep, an email list will really help because then you can email on the day of
Yeah.
and get people to buy on day of. It's really kind of this momentum thing of trying to get people to get on board immediately, and then the number and the momentum follows that. People are like sheep,
Yeah.
and so like they like to go where the crowd goes and where the flock goes. So
Yeah. Hmm.
that
Yeah. Totally.
illusion. even if it's an illusion, that's what you want. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, yeah, totally. You gotta build a momentum towards something, and then as you build a momentum towards something, then you're providing a service. You're giving somebody an experience, which is what's
yeah.
really cool about a comic is like you can create it. You can create that experience. It doesn't require a team of people like on a game or a movie, and it even requires less attention than a novelist. Like I
Yeah.
imagine it would be way more difficult to be a novelist than it would be to be a comic artist, because with comics it's like you immediately see it and you either jive with it or you don't. With
Mm,
a novel, you got to put the you got to actually pick it up and you got to put time into it.
yeah. It's interesting. After listening to so much Chuck Palahniuk's like interviews, I almost like he almost makes me want to try short stories just
Yeah.
because like the way his approach to writing is the way
Okay.
I like is intriguing me. Um, like especially like just short stories in general. He sold me on short stories. He pretty much like to him short stories are the experimental zone of storytelling. It's like it's where he
That's cool.
figures out like it's pretty much like where he puts the method before the story. It's almost like
Yeah.
he described it with Fight Club. He wrote Fight Club. I haven't read Fight Club. I want to,
Uh-huh.
but apparently that book is broken up by the rules of Fight Club. Like
Yeah. Oh,
so
okay.
the chapters. So when he initially wrote Fight Club, it was a short story, and all he was trying to do was, can I write a story and separate out the book into these rules, pretty much like, and that and the connective tissue between scenes are going to be these rules, and it allows you to do all these cool things. And so that's what I kind of like about short stories. It kind of intrigues me. I'm like, can I come up with a cool creative um, tool that you can use in your story that will connect the whole thing together? You know what I mean? Like maybe
Yeah.
you start every scene with like it going backwards and then forwards, like what happened in like Memento, or you know what I mean, like time wise. But
Yeah.
that seems cool. That seems like the reason why I would try writing. But you are right. Like writing novels, screw that, dude. That's hard, dude. That's hard to sell. It's a harder sell for sure.
Totally. Yeah,
Plus, I
man.
spent so long trying to learn how to draw that I might as well use
Yeah. Just
it.
be like, could you imagine getting to this point and just being like, you know what? I always just want to be a novelist. Just
Yeah,
stop.
yeah.
Just, just be
Yeah,
like,
if anything, I'd go the opposite route because the bad part about comics is that you have to draw fast and you end up not drawing to your fullest potential, and you have to kind of go with like 90%, 80% of your skill and then move
Mhm.
on. Where I think in the future, I think the dream is to be able to still make money, but take as long as you need and just draw the full 100%.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, man. I think that there's something to the idea that like the amount of time it is that you give something is like, what is that? Is it Moore's law or some law where it's like the amount of time it is that you give it is the amount of time it is that it needs to complete it. It's like,
Yeah,
would it be a better piece if you spent 10 hours on this one panel and tried to make it like a Akira Otomo
yeah.
cityscape? Like that's awesome. I love that he did that, but maybe it would that time would be better spent on the next story that you're gonna do. You know
It's
what I
true.
mean?
I think there's both perspectives there. I think it would be a feeling kind of thing. It's not like it wouldn't be like I need to make it perfect. It's more like the feeling I have while drawing. Uh, Pull back some of that urgency of deadline. Essentially, like what happens
Yeah, totally.
if I pull back some of the deadline feel and just relax into it a little bit more. What would come from that? That's more of what I mean instead of like going 100% like draw every leaf, um, type of thing. But yeah, that's how it goes. I that's the dream though. Anyway, dude, my biggest struggle is what you're talking about, trying to put out as much work as possible. I think my
Mhm.
biggest weakness right now is that I don't have enough out there. I put so much care into little things, perfectionist wise, that I don't have enough prolific type of numbers to base on. Um,
Yeah,
just mileage, essentially. I'm complaining about mileage. I wish I had more
yeah,
mileage. Yeah.
yeah. That's all of us, man. I mean, like, who was the comic artist who he passed away at like 90 years old on his draftsman table? I can't remember who it was. It wasn't Eisner.
Um, was it Isaac? No,
No, no, it wasn't
Hubert.
Eisner. Maybe.
I'm like guessing like it for some reason it's like merging in every name I think of.
Yeah. But what I mean, like, I don't know if it's there's something romantic. There's kind of a romanticism to the comic artist who does as many pages as they possibly can, puts out as much. Like I was showing you my Doctor Slump,
Yeah.
my Doctor Slump book. Like I'm gonna start. My girlfriend's really big into Conan. I don't know if you know
Hmm.
what Conan is, the
Yeah.
detective.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna start collecting those books too. But like I go through here and I look at these pages and I'm just like, man, these pages are freaking awesome.
Yeah,
And
dude.
it just makes you want to draw. You look at it and you just go like, man, this guy did so much. He did so many books, and it just
It's
makes you be like,
insane.
you gotta do more.
Yeah, it's him and Miyazaki who did like the Ghibli studio stuff.
Yeah,
If you go back and go, I got Nausicaa over here. The crazy. Have
he
you
did
seen the
he
movie?
did stuff, right?
Huh?
He did mangas as well as the films, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I've got Nausicaa the manga on my shelf. It's huge. It's like just that alone. Forget that he made a movie and 12 other movies, and like it's an insane amount of work. I don't even it boggles my mind. But yeah, I like watching. I've been watching some like manga artists like watching their a day in the life type of things. Just because they
Yeah,
see their lifestyle. More just like I like watching them draw and the way because it's totally different than the way I do it. Um, the traditional stuff over there is with the G pen and with like the crow quill stuff, and it's just
mhm.
interesting to see.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a chance to jump over to Japan for the. I don't know if you know what THU is.
No, what is
Trojan
that?
Horse is a unicorn. It's like a conference that's held like every year for like creatives to like come together and network
Oh
and
yeah,
whatnot.
no, no, yeah, I know it was in Japan recently.
Yeah, yeah, we went to Kaga City, which is like 3 hours away from Osaka, and
Cool.
man, it was awesome. I met Terada,
Yeah,
Katsuya Terada. You know him?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
he was there. He did like he did a little
Demo.
demo and did a talk. The director of Minions was there, so it was basically like a
Nice.
storytelling. It
Yeah,
was a storytelling seminar, and I'm gonna try to interview that guy. I met like a couple of different filmmakers, man, but it
that's great.
was it
I've
was
wanted to
really.
go.
Yeah, you got to check it out the next time they have something. That'd be cool. We could hang out.
Yeah, I know, dude. I love meeting people. The people, especially the people that I hang out with online. It's just cool to
Mhm.
meet in person. But yeah, in general, just network and see these guys in person.
Yeah, totally, man. Yeah.
Incredible.
Well, I guess we can close it out and leave it at that, man. And
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of other things to talk about, but we can do another
yeah,
one another time.
yeah, we can do another one. We can kick it some other time. Yeah,
Yeah,
man. So you wanna plug your stuff?
yeah, sure. Let's do that. So I have this book called Star Circuit. We brought it up in the beginning. That is
Mhm.
on my website, starcircuitcomic.com. That is available. You can buy it now. And it'll be on sale probably through Black Friday over here in the States, which will be throughout the next week. And I'm working on chapter two. That's aiming to be early 2024. You can sign up to the email list on the same website. Um, and yeah, you can find my channel. Good Joe is what I am on YouTube. My channel's growing quick. We've doubled subscribers in the last month and getting
Nice,
crazier. Dude, one video hit like 40K views recently, and
nice.
mind blowing for somebody that doesn't get any views. So,
What
um,
was that video on?
coloring, coloring two tone,
Color?
coloring. Yeah.
Okay.
So I
So
think it. it was pretty comprehensive, and I was very personable in it. It's really long too. It's like a 40-minute video. Um,
Okay. So
so yeah,
I do want to ask you one more question then,
sure.
before we jump off. Have you found that the audience of the tutorials is the same audience as the comic book, or is there
No,
overlap?
but there's going to be crossover for sure.
Yeah.
I generally think that the people that back and jump or jump on like Kickstarters and that sort of thing for comic books are a special breed. Um, but they're not that far off. I think you can convert a lot of those people that come in and watch those views for those tutorial type videos. But I would say the conversion rate is going to be small, like 5 to 10% maybe.
Okay. Okay. That's cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you can check out my stuff and Joe's stuff in the description box. I'm putting all of our links down there. I've got a couple of free comics, like I've mentioned here in the conversation, that you guys can download. I'll put those download links down there. Thanks, guys, for watching. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to subscribe to Joe's channel too. And
Thanks, and thanks for having me, Wes.
yeah, man, this was awesome. We're gonna do this again for sure. Take it
Awesome.
easy, guys.